Hey Econ class, Mr. Garcia here. We're going to study in this really short video about Keynesian economics as contrasted with um, classical economics, specifically when we talk about the aggregate supply and demand model. If you remember from our last video, classical economics really only concerns itself with the long run. When we study macroeconomic concepts, we graph price level versus real GDP, which we abbreviate as Y. Now Keynes is one of the most famous modern macroeconomists, probably the most important in the last 100 years, due to his influence on fiscal policy, specifically getting a country or an economy out of a recession. Keynes' ideas come in 1936 with his work, The General Theory, and in it he argues that during a recession, you have what's called sticky wages, and so your short run your aggregate supply curve is first off short run, and it's horizontal. It means that is like our low point. That this is this price level is like our low point, and an aggregate demand is still what it is. Consumers will purchase more output at lower prices. So let's say right there. So we have PL1 and we have Y1. Keynes argues that the reason why the short run aggregate supply curve is horizontal is because of something called sticky wages. This means that the economy is so low that workers are, in the short run, not going to be able to change their wages. They're negotiated in advance. For example, I'm a teacher and I work for a yearly contract, and my wages aren't going to be able to change in the course of a school year or even a 5-year period, because our contracts are negotiated for lengthy periods of time. So what you saw in the 1930s was relatively stable price levels. There was a jump in the like 1936, 1937, 1938. But price level remained about the same relatively. So Keynes speculated that perhaps this is because of a flat or sticky short-run aggregate supply situation. And you'll see when we get to our modern Keynesian analysis how this manifests itself today. But this price level is going to remain stagnant. That workers are unwilling to negotiate for lower wages at that point, so input prices are the same, and then that, you remember, is one of the determinants of supply. So Keynes also is famous for arguing that in the long run we're all dead. So who cares about the long run? Let's deal with the short run. Let's get ourselves out of this recession and boost output. So to Keynes, price level is irrelevant. Output is what's relevant. So one of the things that he does is he argues for expansionary fiscal policy. If you remember from previous lessons, aggregate demand is calculated via the expenditure approach. It's all the expenditures we make in our economy, and so that's C plus I plus G plus X. So if we're able to boost government, then we're going to be able to boost the entire curve. So Keynes argues that if we're able to boost aggregate demand, we will end up with an increased output level, and that is at no expense. Literally, like, price level remains steady if we're able to increase governmental output from one curve to the other. So this is really interesting. The Austrian school of economics kind of contests this idea that we move from just one price level. We stay at one price level and just move to one output. But Keynes' ideas worked in 2009 due to the recession. Like, governments spent a lot of money. You had the American Reinvestment Program, where we built new roads and that kind of thing, and that boosted us out of a recession. So Keynes' ideas are important. To get the economy moving, perhaps the government needs to step in and spend beyond its means. Now, it's important to note that when the government boosts 81 to 82, it's usually spending money it doesn't have, and so it's borrowing. And what that does is this messes with the investment and savings market, or the loanable funds market. It also messes with people's expectations, and those are the critiques of the Austrian school. But really, these two ideas, the classical ideas and the Keynesian ideas, aren't common everyday ideas. Like, they are useful in certain situations. Like when looking at the long run, the classical model is fantastic. When looking at a short run recession, the Keynesian model is fantastic. But for everyday economics, we're going to have to take a look at the modern Keynesian view, or basically we're going to call this the economy in equilibrium model, which is the next video.